Hi, David. Good morning and welcome to FinStep and MEDICI presents Defining Leadership at the Time of COVID-19. Pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
David, you're the CEO and founder of NEET. Would you like to introduce the audience about NEET and what you do in general?
Sure. So NEET is a FinTech company headquartered in Hong Kong. Our mission is to enable the entrepreneur economy. What it means is that we help young businesses expand and grow internationally, particularly B2B businesses that are in the export side of the economy. We enable them to do that by helping them incorporate in places like Hong Kong or Singapore, which are fantastic places to basically reach the world. From a business point of view, we also enable them with a multi-currency account to help them move money, so receive and pay in multiple currencies. We also have corporate expense cards and a whole slew of value-added services like integration with accounting software, for example, payment gateways. If you want to have your own website to sell stuff online in e-commerce space, we help you with that and get you great deals for it as well. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. We enable this entrepreneur economy, as we say.
So David, my question will be that what we have seen is for SMEs and small businesses, it's kind of difficult to incorporate, to open bank accounts, to do a bunch of these things that you mentioned. But specifically banking, opening a bank account in places like Hong Kong, how hard it is and how much of that problem are you really solving? I'm guessing you do digital onboarding and all of that.
Yes. So, one of our biggest value propositions, or so our customers tell us, is that we have a quick and easy onboarding process. It's all online. It's 15 minutes. It can be done from around the world at any time of day or night. This doesn't mean that it's not rigorous, nevertheless, right? So we managed to strike a very good balance between the risk and the reward that there is in doing this type of business. As you say, not only incorporating, that's frankly the easier part of the business. Nothing is easy, right? It is the easier part. And then of course, offering an alternative to a bank account, which is very, very hard to get for especially newly incorporated companies, young businesses. And that boils down to, again, risk and reward. It is very clear, I can say this, I think, comfortably, having worked 16 years in a very large bank myself, that there is no real appetite for larger institutions, particularly banks, to have these younger companies as customers, because those customers don't generate enough revenues to cover the very heavy costs that these large institutions have. And so it's left a complete gap in the market. And as entrepreneurs ourselves, we feel that we owe it to other entrepreneurs to give people a chance. And the world, although clearly this coronavirus environment has really raised an enormous amount of questions, but the one thing that's very clear is that having digital solutions in this environment is a huge plus, right? And so it's accelerated, I think, a trend that was in any case happening, especially so for smaller businesses that want to reach out and trade with the rest of the world.
Right. And the general assumption in the market is that digital products should do much better in these times. We also know that, you just raised $11 million or so. You are expanding, you opened an office in UK. I wanted to understand some of the considerations, right? So for example, I know that in the back end, you switched from one bank to the other. You're also thinking of switching the card network. How do you kind of think about these things? How do you think about growth? Do you expand geographically? Do you expand, in a particular sort of, product line? Can you explain a little bit of these things?
Sure. So a couple of building blocks to the answer, right? One is that we've over time developed a set of core values via which we literally, run the company with. So the top core value for us is to put the customer at the center of anything we do, right? So we need to be driven by what the customers, demand, their pain points. We love falling in love with pain points, right? We don't like to fall in love with solutions. It's the pain points that we really love, and then we find solutions on the back of that. I think it's something very easily overlooked as an entrepreneur, and we really stick to those very basic building blocks, very important. So we follow, customers and their demands. And what we've noticed is that since we have, focused our business on the SME sector to serve these businesses, that the typical persona that has been valuing our services, therefore also, continuing to demand and help us expand the product suite, is a B2B type of business, typically an exporter. If you look at the Asian side of things, doesn't mean only goods, it means also services, which is also very interesting in this environment especially. And the corridor that we found ourselves adding a lot of value in is this Asia to Europe and Europe to Asia corridor, right? I think we've done a very good job in that. I think there's a lot more to do. Primarily, it started with China, Europe, and China, UK, China, Germany, China, France. Those are the three main countries where we've seen the flows, and vice versa. And we see plenty of opportunity to build on that. So the decision of expanding our presence, not only here in Hong Kong, Shenzhen, but also London, as you mentioned, is just to cover and service those customers much better, right? We learned our lessons, by the way. I think customer support is a hard thing to get right, let me tell you candidly, right? But I think we finally cracked it. You want to have basically round-the-clock service, round-the-clock coverage, and for that you also need to have presence in different places in different time zones.
I've seen Need grow from the beginning. When I came in as a student here and in the early days, had the Need prepaid debit MasterCard, and then now as a new business, as you said, my first bank account is a Need account. And it's great to see the progress. You're sitting in your new office and the bigger office as you guys have grown. So one of the things I wanted to ask about, just as an extension of what you were speaking about, was China, right? So you are helping companies when it comes to China. Now, even for companies based in Hong Kong, it's not as simple to enter China or open bank accounts in China. So maybe if you're able to shed a little more light about your product in China, it would be great to understand more on that.
Sure. The product is really a global product. It's not, I guess, yet a localized product in China. And localizing a product, make no mistake, is not only translating websites kind of thing and the customer support, very importantly, that goes along with it. There's a lot of building blocks that go along, servicing a domestic customer base. So with respect to China, it is very clear, at least until a month or so ago with this COVID situation, that China is the factory of the world in general, right? Our base case scenario, by the way, is that that continues. Eventually, the crisis does blow away, and it may not be as comprehensive as it was before, but we continue to see China playing a very key role in the world economy, particularly so in terms of goods, not so much services, but more so goods, as opposed to, say, India, which is a lot more service driven as well as goods. So we like that dynamic. I think by being headquartered in Hong Kong, it's a natural ecosystem to be involved in. The reality is that a lot of businesses that conduct trade from China and into China actually really leverage Hong Kong, to the max, right? Because Hong Kong is such a convenience financial center to be based out of. Aside from SEPA and therefore the trade advantages that there are in doing business with China, there's a very efficient environment. The moment you can actually have either a bank account or an alternative like me, then you're in business, right? And it's a very efficient place to do so. So the reality is that a lot of trade that's happening in and out of China actually is conducted via Hong Kong. So having presence in Hong Kong, having an account that allows you to receive and pay money in Hong Kong in domestic transfers, it's cheap, it's real time now, is a huge advantage in conducting business with China.
Okay. David, in this time, as you mentioned, we've seen COVID's impact in Hong Kong since late January, and we're into 3 months down the line now. How have your team and you been managing, right? From work from home policies to compliance, etc. Considering you have an international team, what has been the process of handling project deadlines, product launches, announcements, changing of your branding from need.com, need.hk to needcommerce.com? What has been the process for that?
So it's a hodgepodge of things that have led to all these outcomes. Let's take COVID first as a topic. Still going through it, obviously, so it remains fluid. I think there, having had a pretty gruesome but a very useful experience in retrospect, having worked through SARS, and emphasis on the worked through SARS, because I realized that when this thing started to take off, I was just sharing with the rest of the team, my experiences of having, again, worked through SARS, because I realized most of my team actually did not work at the time. They were at school. And it's 17 years ago, right? It made me realize that I'm not so young anymore, I guess. But it's a great thing in that retrospect, because it was a pretty gruesome time. It was the first time ever, I think, in terms of the financial services within the last few generations that lived through something like this. And there's a lot of takeaways that I think are very interesting for COVID, and chief of which the fact that you need to really be focused on something. Typically work helps because otherwise it can be extremely distracting. It's a negative spiral that gets involved, especially if you're working from home. You know, I remember back in the days, you know, working from home, I wasn't married, didn't have children at the time. I had a dog, right? And I sat down and I looked at my dog and my dog looked at me, and it was cool, right? The first few days, but then after a few days, like everything starts to like fall apart, right? And so your mindset, which is I think half of the game in going through something like COVID, is extremely important to keep very sane and to have it trained and to be focused. And having learned it the hard way through SARS, I think really helped me steer the team, at least so far, throughout this COVID environment. What we did is a few things. Because it's a very different environment even at work. Now, you know, we're a young and energetic startup. At the time I was working for a large global bank, very different type of ecosystem, very different type of infrastructure. What we did as a young company, above all, is to, again, put the customers at the center of the picture. So you may have seen some posts that we publicized that we have actually refrained from charging fees until the end of May to our customers. It's a small gesture, but we hope that it's a small gesture that goes some way to helping people with their cash flow issues, because we know full well some of our customers are really struggling in this environment, right? So every little helps. And again, customers first. Second, our team members. Our team members, what we did is that we obviously allowed for the entire team globally to work from home, but the office remains open, right? I mean, we had problems in Shenzhen actually keeping the office open. That was mandatorily shut. But in Hong Kong, the office has been open all along. It is not mandatory to come to the office. We do not accept visitors in the office at this point in time. We wear masks in the office. I'm now in a segregated office, but as you've seen at the beginning of the call, I had a mask on, and we all do. We have masks available. We have hand sanitizers. We have carpet sanitizers. It's a carpet that's sterilized. You walk in. And we have extra cleaning, right? Several rounds of cleaning every day. So this to say that we create an environment that is very safe, very clean, and we check temperature for everybody coming in on a daily basis. We wheel people in and out of the office if they want to come to the office via Uber, so that they don't have to take public transport and being exposed potentially to other infected cases. So all this to say that, again, there is a very controlled environment that is here, and it enables people, whether they choose to work from home or if they want to have more focus and they be at work, to just, you know, put their head down and carry on. This has really been very helpful to continue delivering on our product roadmap, which is super busy, as you can imagine. We've been able to actually find faster ways of shipping product, which is very interesting. It has enabled us to over-communicate, which is always a good thing, I think. And therefore, actually, we've become, believe it or not, more efficient in this environment than we even were before.
Great. David, last question with regards to the whole topic. It's about leadership. So how have you personally been dealing with this as a leader? You mentioned about the steps you've taken for your staff and things, but how have you been dealing as a leader? Are you more closer to your team? Are you paying more attention to their other needs? You know, and there's been multiple things happening at the same time for you. So how is the management team and yourselves dealing with that?
Sure. So I'm definitely much closer, right? So on a weekly basis, not only with my direct reports, but also with, you know, people who are reports of reports, right? I have lunch with them. I have coffee with them. It's very, very important to, you know, really be very close to people, because there's dynamics that are not always obvious. People are not always sharing. We have had team members losing dear ones in Europe. It's been tough, actually, from that point of view, but I think it's even more important to, you know, to be close to people. And so that's been a great thing, I think. It's been challenging, make no mistake, right? Because should we basically do the same thing as a, you know, large bank that basically says, oh, all employees just go work from home, don't come back to the office, kind of thing? We cannot afford to do that, right? And knowing what I've known through SARS, you get so much distraction, and so your productivity goes down very fast. We need to keep, you know, focus ultimately for the benefit of our customers as well. So that's been tough to make sure that we designed policies and procedures that were in line with that. But overall, I think, first of all, a great reaction from the team. I think everybody's been really, you know, rolling up their sleeves, and it's all hand on deck. But you know, in general, the biggest challenge perhaps is to deal with different regions and different policies, right? Like clearly mainland China has been a very big impact, first of all. We have even a team member who was going home or went home to Wuhan to see the family, got stuck there for over a month and a half. Didn't take a laptop to begin with, so we had to find a way to ship a laptop, which was like an acrobatic act. And then London, right? Like London right now is still in the middle of chaos, yeah? And yet the weather is very nice and everybody wants to go out. And like, it's a very difficult thing to handle. I guess the ultimate advantage is that we are still a small company. We're 62 people, we're not huge. The majority of people are here in Hong Kong. It's still manageable, right? I can imagine when you're like really in the hundreds and you've grown really, really fast and you don't even know the name of the people in your team, that gets a lot more challenging. So for us, it's still a period where we're nimble enough. A lot of changes are happening. You mentioned our funding round, which has been a major, major milestone for us and a huge stamp of approval given the investors we got on board. I think it's been all a positive, interestingly enough. So we feel extremely fortunate that we are in a segment of the economy that is actually enabled by an environment like this. As I mentioned at the beginning, things are accelerating for us in this, trends are just accelerating in this environment. And so we want to make sure that we deliver that positivity to ultimately our customers.
Okay, and as we close the session, I just wanted to pass this information. You know, we are telling all the founders and people that we are talking to. So MEDICI and FinStep Asia realized that a lot of people who were going for internships and during this session, there's a lot of internships which start, and a lot of them have been affected. So, you know, either the internships have been canceled or they have been postponed, or, you know, there are issues around that. So what we started as an initiative is we said, can we actually aggregate a lot of, you know, these applications of people who have lost their internships or their internships have gotten affected, and then pass on this, curated list of interns to companies like yours. So if you're interested, do let us know offline, and we'll be happy to, send you some resumes of interns.
No, I'm happy to mention it online. I'm very interested. If anything, we're in full expansion ourselves, especially so with links to Southeast Asia, India, Philippines, particularly two markets that we're very focused on. If you have good people, please send them our way.
Sure. Thank you so much, David, for your time. And it was a really good session to see your positivity and the strength and focus with which you're going ahead. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.